Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another DFF show for January 26th. Hope you guys all had a good weekend. Obviously, no show yesterday. It was only a one-game showdown slate. Didn't feel like it was really necessary to do it. I'm assuming that some of you guys probably played it, but if you did, I hope you had some success. But I probably won't be doing any shows for one-game slates just for the future knowledge. But I'm not going to waste any time here. Let's get right into this massive slate. We got 13 games tonight, so we want to dive right in, make sure I can cover as many things as possible throughout the course of this show. So let's start it off. Florida Panthers in Columbus. Sergei Bobrovsky returning to Columbus, starting in goal for Florida. Korpisalo expected to go for the Blue Jackets. Vanacek expected to continue to start for the Capitals, while Ilya Samsonov is out. Semyon Varlamov expected to go against his former team as well. Scott Wedgwood coming off a shutout, confirmed to start for the Devils. Brian Elliott for the Flyers. Linus Ullmark expected to continue to start for the Sabres as they host the Rangers. Alexander Georgiev goes for them, looking for a bounce-back performance. After a tough outing in his last start, Tuukka Rask expected to go for the Bruins against Tristan Jarry, who's suddenly gotten hot. Kaapo Kähkönen continues to start for the Wild with Cam Talbot nursing a lower body injury. Cal Peterson goes for the Kings in that game. Connor Hellebuck starts for the Jets. Mikko Koskinen expected to go for the Oilers in what should be a high-scoring affair. The Predators are going to turn to Pekka Rinne tonight, most likely. Malcolm Subban confirmed to start for the Blackhawks. It's his first start since opening night, so a little bit of rust probably there. And Han Hudobin continues to get the nod for the Dallas Stars, off to a 2-0 start after a lengthy absence at the start of the season, and Thomas Greiss is most likely going to go. The Red Wings have been alternating games between their two goalies, so most likely Thomas Greiss for the Red Wings. Same goes for the Golden Knights. They've been alternating starters as well, so Robin Lehner should be in net tonight. Jordan Binnington goes for the Blues. Philip Grubauer expected to go for the Avalanche, and Martin Jones confirmed for the Sharks. Darcy Kemper confirmed for the Coyotes. Most likely we will see John Gibson for the Ducks. And then the last game of the night, finally, we've reached the end. Jakob Markstrom confirmed going against Frederik Andersen for the Maple Leafs. Andersen probably going to get a lot of more run than he ever would have. Jack Campbell out for a couple weeks. That was announced today. So, all right, let's break this thing down. Massive slate. I don't know if I'm going to be able to break everything down game by game, but I will do my best. Tanner says, let's go. You've helped me make some major money. Beautiful. Love to hear it. Congratulations. Last week's show, Friday, wasn't great. We didn't. I felt like we hit on kind of all the key spots in terms of which games to target and which teams to target. But it was like if we targeted the top line, the second line went off, and if we targeted the second line, the top line went off, or whatever. It was just kind of a weird night. But we're gonna get back on track here today. So all right. I was crazy busy today with the 13-game slate, so I've kind of been scrambling to get this ready to go for the show. If you are a premium subscriber, 5v5 scores up at dailyfaceoff.com, as well as all the matchup pictures. But let's go through some of my top stacks of this tonight. So Colorado 1 comes out on top. Very good line. They usually are going to be ranked near the top. So obviously they look really good tonight. A pretty big discrepancy between Colorado 1 at the top and Edmonton 1 at second. So, some of the usual suspects at the top here: Colorado 1, Edmonton 1, Toronto 1, Buffalo 1 continues to pop at the top. They've looked really good so far. I like Buffalo a lot tonight. I'm a little worried about it though, just considering last game they did move Taylor Hall to Eric Stahl's line. They bumped Victor Olofsson up to Jack Eichel's line, but it looks like based on the morning skate, they're going to go back to the Hall, Eichel, Reinhart, at least to start. So hopefully if, we do stack Buffalo 1, hopefully that line stays together throughout the course of the game. But Washington 1 looks pretty good as well. They've looked very solid. It's basically their only really offensive line, but they've been doing really well. Nick Backstrom's on fire right now. So even without all their guys missing due to COVID, that line's been able to kind of sustain for them. I think they went to 3 straight shootout games against Buffalo. Buffalo looks like one of the best defensive teams in hockey right now, which is crazy to say. So Washington 1 definitely in play. But just moving along here quickly, Winnipeg 2 looks like they're in a good spot. Nikolai Ehlers is on absolute fire right now. Paul Stastny also correlates with him on PP1, so they're kind of an interesting pivot because, Winnipeg 1 seems to draw a lot of ownership a lot, so going down to Winnipeg 2 looks like it's a pretty decent option tonight. All right, let's break these all down, though. We'll kind of go through it. Let's start with this first game. Columbus, Florida. Don't have a ton of love for this game, but if you look here, so we've got Columbus. Columbus really altogether doesn't have much that we like here. All their lines are in the red. And I think it's for good reason. I do have a little bit of interest in Columbus 2 tonight. Texier has been playing pretty well. Bjorkstrand is super cheap, but the problem with them is they've been using them in kind of like a shutdown role. So Alexander Texier's line is expected to play 60% of their minutes against Florida 1. So going up against the Barkov line is never usually a recipe for success. Barkov, they are only giving up 24 scoring chances against per 60, only 5 high danger chances. So it's going to be really difficult for that Columbus second line. Although I do like them, I think I'll probably play them in the future. But tonight, not so much, not going to be the night. And I do have a little bit of interest in Bob as well. So let's make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. So yeah, not a whole lot of interest on the Columbus side of things. In terms of for Florida, though, I do like Florida a little bit. Just their top line is the only one that I'm interested in. They have been putting up really impressive numbers so far. Small sample size, obviously, but Carter Verhaeghe, Alexander Barkov, Anthony Duclair has been a really strong line for them through a couple of games. And you still get Verhaeghe and Duclair super cheap, both volume shooters, so they should be able to hit their value pretty easily. Barkov is getting up there in price, but on a big 13-game slate, I don't think I'm going to have too much Florida. They don't, you're not going to find them near the top of my chart. But if you're trying to pivot, play something a little bit less popular, Florida 1 definitely in play. Their numbers so far have been really solid in small sample size. I do have quite a bit of interest in this Washington Islanders game. If we look here, so the only line that you can even consider targeting on the Islanders side is the top line because Anthony Beauvillier is out. So that's going to, it's not even confirmed, but I would imagine based on last game, Cal Clutterbuck moved up. That might not be the case. It might be Kiefer Bellows, might be Michael Del Cole. It could be any number of people that move up to that second line. But regardless, they just lose a lot of their upside without Beauvillier on that line. So if I'm going to play the Islanders, it's going to be that top line. They've been kind of snake bitten so far, but their numbers remain very strong. So if we look here, they're going to be seeing 73% of Washington 3. Washington 3 is, I believe, the Nick Dowd line. They've kind of been elevated to Washington 3 by default with all the people that are out. Yeah, it is. So it's the Nick Dowd line. They're pretty solid defensively, but the Islanders are going to have to try to score somehow, and if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be that top line, especially tonight, given the injuries. So they're not the best play on the slate at all, but as you see here, really strong numbers across the board, 35 scoring chances, 4 per 60. So even in a tough matchup, they should be able to overcome that. But a little bit more of my interest comes on the Washington side of the puck. I really like Washington's top line tonight. They're among the top stacks for me tonight. They are expected to see a big portion of that Brock Nelson line, who, as I mentioned, they are going to lose a little bit of their luster without Anthony Beauvillier. So that second line giving up 31 scoring chances against per 60 right now. Meanwhile, the Washington top line, 32 scoring chances for. So looks like a terrific spot for Washington 1 tonight. Their price is not overwhelming either. It's definitely a line that you can play and fit some other pieces, as you can see here. The 9th most expensive full stack on the slate tonight. So definitely a line that you can get to and still play another pretty good line. So Washington 1 definitely interests me. I don't think I'll go down to Washington 2 or Washington 3. There's just obviously Washington 3 is not in play at all. They're strictly defense. And then I don't have a whole lot of interest in a Lars Eller line when it doesn't have somebody like TJ Oshie on it. Even if Tom Wilson plays, it just doesn't do anything for me. So, obviously it's easy to say target both top lines, but really I wouldn't be looking anywhere else other than those two if you're going to be targeting this game at all. Philadelphia and the Devils, probably another game I'm not going to have a whole lot of exposure on. As you can see in my pace rating here, it's supposed to be one of the lower paced games, which I think if if you've watched the Devils and the Flyers, especially the Flyers last couple games, it's just that it's been sludgy, especially going up against the Devils. They don't really seem to give up a whole heck of a lot. So I don't really have a lot of interest in playing either side. The way the Flyers have their lines configured right now, it's ugly. James Van Riemsdyk on the top line. Him and Voracek are super cheap if you want to play Kevin Hayes. Scott Wedgwood did get a shutout last game, but I don't think Scott Wedgwood's all that good. So Philly's definitely in an okay spot in terms of the matchup. But the way their lines are configured, it's hard to get there. I guess, have a little bit of interest in that third line, but Nolan Patrick was absent, so I think he's expected to play. I don't know for sure. I haven't seen too much on him, but again, this is just a game that looks like it's going to be pretty low event, not a whole lot of intrigue here. But if we want to break it down a little bit, so if we're targeting the Kevin Hayes line, they're expected to see 62% of the Zajac line. And as you can see, the Zajac line does give up a decent amount of chances. 33 scoring chances against per 60 is definitely a spot where you can target the Flyers. But the problem is the way the Flyers lines are configured right now, there's just really not, in terms of historical data, there's not a whole lot to like. The offense is pretty bland. But if I was going to play somebody, that Kevin Hayes line looks okay. James Van Riemsdyk, he's super cheap. He's been getting hot a little bit. The one thing that's very interesting too, if you want to play them, is you can play Van Riemsdyk, you can play Hayes, or together on a power play unit, and Shane Gostisbehere returns tonight. And Shane Gostisbehere, who I will talk a little bit more later, is the minimum price tonight. So if you want to stuff in some of these really high price stacks, you can definitely play a little mini Philly stack because it's going to be super cheap. Van Riemsdyk, like I mentioned, is extremely cheap. I think he's only 3,800, and then Hayes 6,300, and then Gostisbehere minimum price. So it's a decent spot, especially if you're not expecting Scott Wedgwood to post another shutout. For a slate this large, I'd rather go to the 4-game turbo and 4-game late slates for DK. Yeah, for sure. And that's why I'm going to try to break down every single game here as fast as I can, because I know that a lot of people do like to play those smaller slates. They are a little bit easier. On a big slate like this, I usually play the main slate and all the other little slates too. So that's why I'm trying to break it all down so you guys can at least have an idea if you're playing the late, early, anything you want to do. Everybody hit that like button. Brock's working hard today. Yeah, thank you very much. Today's been wild. It's the first time I've done the show and had a 13-game slate, so it's been a little bit hectic, to say the least. But all right, Rangers, Buffalo. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will try to get to them. Tanner says Washington 1 over Colorado 1. Like in terms of ownership, yeah, like it's a good pivot. Colorado 1, though, is by far my top stack tonight. I will get to them here. They're in just an absolutely terrific spot, so I wouldn't fully fade Colorado 1, but they are going to be popular. But on a slate this large, it's hard to, like, the ownership's usually not all that concentrated, but Colorado 1 going up against San Jose looks like a recipe for success for them. So, all right, Buffalo and Rangers. So Buffalo 1 is a line I've been playing quite a bit lately. I really like them. They've been a little bit snake bitten as well. Like they've been paying off in DK, but they haven't had that explosion game. So I'm going to keep going back to Buffalo 1 until they do. They're generating chances at a really impressive rate right now. They're just not finishing every opportunity they've had. They've come really close. Taylor Hall hit a post, I think, the other day on a penalty shot, which was pretty disappointing. But yeah, the Eric Staal line is really not generating. Oh, let me go to the stats here. The Eric Staal line is not generating any offense at all right now. I think that's why they decided to drop Taylor Hall down the other day to try to get that line going. But as you can see, these three other three lines in Buffalo are not doing anything right now. And the Eichel line has just been absolutely outstanding. So if you're playing Buffalo, you have to play that top line. It's really the only spot. If you want to get different, you could add Olofsson in to go for the full power play stack. Rasmus Dahlin is also very intriguing tonight. He had been playing really poorly. He looked good against Washington the other night. He's only 4,100. So stacking Buffalo 1 with Rasmus Dahlin is definitely something you can fit in. And it's definitely a spot that I really, really like tonight. For the Rangers side of things, I think the second line is usually the one that I go to. Again, based on the numbers here, they look like the right option when it comes to playing New York. for obvious reasons, obviously Artemi Panarin, best player on that team. They have the best offensive numbers among the entire Rangers team. But as you can see here, and I mentioned it earlier, the Sabres, for whatever reason, however they figured it out, have been really solid defensively this year. Linus Ullmark is playing pretty well. So I don't have a ton of interest in the Rangers, but again, it's only a matter of time before New York 2, similar to Buffalo 1, has just kind of that blow-up game. Does it come in Buffalo tonight? Perhaps, but I think there are kind of better. There's a lot better spots on a 13-game slate than going Rangers 2, although I do have a little bit of interest in them. If we look at how expensive they are, 17,000. Panarin's down to 6,800, so you got to like that. Strome, I think, finally scored his last game, so he's maybe going to start figuring it out. But until Strome starts playing better and it becomes New York 2 of last year, I don't have a ton of interest. Although Panarin does look like a pretty solid one-off at 6,800, that price is ridiculously low. So for a player of his caliber, so I do like Panarin as a one-off in this game for sure. Nylander or Kaprizov tonight? Ooh, let me think about that one. When I get closer to those games, I'll really kind of figure it out and narrow it down. Boston and Pittsburgh looks like another game that I'm not going to play a ton. It is among the lowest. I think it's the second lowest in terms of my pace rating on this slate. Boston 1 finally had their blow-up game, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are still giving up a shitload of chances, although Yari has been playing better. So I don't love either side of this game. I think obviously, once Pastrnak gets back, I'll probably lock and load Boston 1 on most nights because they just seem to rip it up all the time. Best line in hockey, but as you can see here, not a lot of opportunities given up by the Bruins right now, and the Penguins are obviously the Crosby line is always good, but the really interesting thing about Pittsburgh tonight is they did shuffle their lines quite a bit. So that's what maybe puts them in play for me. Brian Russ moved up to the Crosby line, so that's obviously going to provide a boost for them. But I do have interest in this Malkin line because Jason Zucker 2,900, Kasperi Kapanen 2,900, and Malkin 5,200. That's so cheap for all three of those players. All three of those players are drastically underpriced for how good they are. Obviously, Zucker has not looked very good early on. Malkin's kind of slow out of the gate. So they don't pop on in the matchup, and that's just because their numbers aren't good. But it is Evgeny Malkin, and he's 5,200. I mean, it's hard to not play him. If you're playing multiple lineups, I think that they're definitely in play. To full stack Pittsburgh 2, we're talking about them being it's fucking crazy. They're the 49th most expensive line tonight. That's insane. So I think if you're building multiple lineups, you want to play Colorado 1. How often can you easily fit an Evgeny Malkin full stack in with Colorado 1? You're never going to, probably the only time it's going to happen all year. So Pittsburgh, it's not a great matchup. Boston is tough, but at that price, you got to play him a little bit. Do I prefer Rene or Bobrovsky? Rene by a little bit. I like both of them tonight, but definitely Rene by a little bit. Bobrovsky's so weird. He's so good some nights, and then he's just terrible. He has had success going back to Columbus, but I'm not going to look too much into that narrative. But I do like Rene tonight a little bit. Malkin and Cash, yeah, I think so. He's only 5,200. You're never going to get him at that price. He is still playing fine. He is a guy that usually has terrific shot volume. His shot volume has been gone this year, so he is risky. But he's 5,200 and he's getting Malkin. So I'm not going to play him. He's still a focal point on that power play, and if they're going to score, it's just too cheap. So yes, are you constructing teams differently now that prices are getting more accurate? Yeah, I mean tonight again is another one of these nights. I still think the pricing's off because there's so many guys that are ridiculously cheap right now. So I mean, I always usually construct my lineups pretty similarly. It just all depends. You obviously want to play these top stacks. Colorado 1, you want to get them in tonight, but they're 23,000, so it's tough. So you have to find some cheaper options if you're playing them. So yeah, it all depends who you're playing on what night, and that really determines how you're going to construct your lineups. Sorry, I kind of skipped over Boston. I don't love them. their blow up game. Now they're super expensive. So without Pastrnak, I don't feel like paying over 20,000 for Boston 1 without Pastrnak. I just, it's a pretty good matchup. The Penguins haven't been terrific defensively, but if Yari continues to play well, they're not going to score that many goals, and it's just too expensive. And they're not, I'd much rather play a full Edmonton 1 stack for, $3,000 cheap, or almost the same price. Sorry. All right, Minnesota, LA. Minnesota is a team that I just keep going to just because I love their players. I just love Kaprizov and I love Fiala. But I don't think I'm going to get there tonight. Just looks like a super low scoring game. It doesn't grade out very well on the pace scale. The top line for the Kings has been playing really well. Kopitar, I think, is tied for the league lead in points, which is crazy. I don't know where that came from. But they're going to be going up against the Joel Eriksson-Ek line. And if you've been paying attention to this show for the last couple of weeks, the Eriksson-Ek line is just outstanding defensively. Only 12 scoring chances against for 60, which is unheard of. So no interest in the Kopitar line at all. And then as you can see, the rest of the Kings is just a black hole of offense right now. So no interest in the Kings whatsoever. I think Kakkonen is in play tonight. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. I think he's 8,000. So I think that there's probably some safer options around Kakkonen in terms of trying to get a win tonight. But he's a fine play. They're so good defensively, and it's not like if that Eriksson-Ek line shuts down Kopitar, like I don't know how the Kings are going to generate any offense. So that is a little bit scary, especially with Kakkonen. Like you're probably not going to get the 35 save bonus or anything like that on DraftKings. So I think there are better options than him tonight at that price. I wish he was a little bit cheaper. But Minnesota, they did shake things up today. So Kevin Fiala is actually on that top line with Nick Bjugstad and Zach Parise. But I have a hard time. You can't full stack them. I'm not playing Bjugstad. I wasn't playing Victor Rask. I can't get to those guys. I don't think it's a terrible option if you're building a bunch of lineups and you want to pair them with one of the super high price lines. But like I said, you can get Pittsburgh 2 for cheaper, and they're Malkin centering that line instead of Nick Bjugstad. So I think that they're set up for a lot better success. And if you're going to play a cheap line, it would have to be Pittsburgh 2 over Minnesota 1. Is Kemper a smart goalie play tonight? Yeah, absolutely. I love Kemper tonight. That's what I was just kind of going to get to with Kakkonen. He's fine at 8,000, but he's the same price as Darcy Kemper. And Kemper is just such a better goalie. He's top 5 goalie in the entire NHL. And Arizona looks pretty solid. And Anaheim, not a lot there, but we'll get to that game a little bit more here in a minute. All right, moving on. Great game between the Oilers and Jets the other night. It was fantastic. Draisaitl scored with 0.7 seconds. That was sweet. Where did they go? Okay, so I don't love Winnipeg won tonight. They have finally gotten up there in price. They were kind of like a plug and play at one point there for the majority of last week, because they were super cheap for how good they are. But now they're up over 21,000, 21.5 to full stack them. So they've gotten a little bit too pricey. So I have more interest in Winnipeg too tonight. Andrew Kopp has been outstanding. I kind of gave him some flack last week when we didn't know who was going to play on that top line. And he's just been terrific lately. Ehlers is a man on fire right now. I think he has goals in 4 consecutive. He's been just flying around the ice every single shift. So let's take a look here. So Winnipeg 2 is expected to see 67% of their ice time against the Draisaitl line tonight. The Draisaitl line is easily the worst defensive line in Edmonton. As you can see here, 35 scoring chances against per 60, which is among the worst defensive lines on the entire slate. So Winnipeg, Winnipeg 2, who actually has better underlying numbers than Winnipeg 1 right now, looks like a terrific play tonight. I don't think they'll be overly popular. So I really like Winnipeg 2, excuse me. Obviously, Winnipeg 1 remains in play. The Oilers, they are playing a little bit better defensively. Koskinen has been a little bit better, and they correlate together all on the top power play unit, but they're just a little too expensive for me tonight. And there's better super expensive options than Winnipeg 1. So I'm going to go Winnipeg 2 tonight. Again, we've kind of been talking about it anytime Edmonton plays. I still am going to the McDavid line routinely instead of the Draisaitl line. Draisaitl is still That line just not getting it going. Obviously, Draisaitl had a pretty good game the other night, but every time he scored, it came with McDavid on the ice with him. And most of the game, that's not going to be the case. So really like Edmonton won tonight, especially because they've got Jesse Puljujarvi on the top line. It was such a good move. I was waiting for it to happen. Get Zach Cassian out of there. He is a much better bottom six player. Jesse Puljujarvi, just 3,000. Terrific play. Unbelievable cash game play. He's great shot volume. He's playing with McDavid. He's going to be popular 100%, but he is just outstanding. He looked really good on the top line the other night. So he's an automatic lock for cash. And then I would full stack them. No question about it. If you are going to leave somebody off that stack, to me, it's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. He's been hot. He's been good. But he's getting up there in price. So if you need to leave it off and, you want to go with a couple mini stacks, I have no problem just going McDavid, Puljujarvi. But the full line stack obviously really increases your upside if you're playing GPP. Winnipeg 2 over Edmonton 1. I wouldn't go that far. I would rather play Edmonton 1, but obviously you're not going to be able to. It's going to be hard to squeeze in like Edmonton 1 with one of these other really, really good top plays, these top lines. So in terms of price, they're probably about the same. If you can fit Edmonton 1, I would rather play Edmonton 1, but if you need salary savings, Winnipeg 2 is right there in terms of value. The points per dollar or whatever that you're going to get out of these two lines will probably be pretty similar by the end of the night, I would imagine. All right, Nashville and Chicago. So you kind of have to like Nashville a little bit. Because Chicago is not very good. Malcolm Subban is especially not very good. And so, Rene looks like a great play in net. He is 8,100. So him and Kemper, two of my favorite goalie plays, obviously a little bit on the more expensive end. But the Blackhawks don't have DeBrincat, so they're missing, 1/3 of their top line. Pia Suter had a hat trick the other day. So, maybe people play Chicago 1. I don't know. But I'm definitely not. These, came against Detroit. They're terrible. I think the one line I like in this game, obviously I always like Nashville 1, but they are a little bit too expensive. They just don't play enough. They love to roll 4 lines in Nashville, and they're going to end up playing about the same amount of ice time as Nashville 2, and Nashville 2 is ridiculously cheap tonight. So they are my preferred play. They actually grade out better in the model too. So Nashville 2 is my preferred play if you're going to go up against Chicago. Granlund off to a really nice start. He's not the min price anymore, but he's only 3,300. Matt Duchene's dropped under 4K. Luke Kunin, 3,800. Duchene and Kunin, before Granlund came, were playing really well together. Now that Granlund's on the line, they've been really solid as well, or still, I should say. They're expected to see 42% of their ice time against Chicago 3. If we go to the big board here, Chicago 3 giving up 27 scoring chances against per 60. That's the Carl Soderberg line. Obviously, that whole line is pretty much brand new, but they haven't been very good. With Janmark, when it was Walmart with Janmark, they were giving up chances, and I don't think it's going to change too much with Soderberg. He's probably better than Walmart, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference. As you can see here, they're not generating anything offensively. So Nashville 2 should control the majority of the play against Chicago 3. And it's just a great matchup in terms of putting up goals. And I think that they'll probably come in with much lower ownership. They'll probably be almost not owned. I think most of the ownership will flock towards Nashville 1, who is a line that I typically love. Typically, they have just outstanding underlying numbers. It has not been the case so far this year. Just 22 scoring chances, 4 per 60, much lower expected goals than Nashville 2. So that's where I'm going. And again, with no DeBrincat, I have no interest in Chicago at all. Their second lines with Kubalik and Strome has been even better than the Kane line, but I don't even know what their lines are going to look like tonight. So I'm not going to try to play Chicago and then late swap later and try to figure out my lineup just because I wanted to get Chicago, and it's just not worth it. Nashville 2 along with Winnipeg 2 for the turbo slate. Got it. Yeah, there you go. Go with Ellis rather than Yossi. I mean, if you can fit Yossi, he's the preferred play. But let's pull up their power play units here for a minute. I can't memorize all of them. Granlund, I would still probably play Yossi. He's just got the higher floor and higher ceiling. I do love Ellis, but if you can fit it, go Yossi, but no problem playing Ellis. I do like Dante Fabro a lot too if you need to save the money. Dante Fabro is always one of my favorite deep punts. Stars and Red Wings. So the Stars are banged up. Their lines are a total disaster. I don't really know what to do with them. Obviously, playing against the Red Wings, terrific matchup. The Red Wings are more banged up. The Red Wings have nobody. They're missing 60% of their power play. But I don't know what to do with these lines. I think the only thing I would really do is, maybe a couple little mini stacks with Rupe, Hansen, Gurianov, or Pavelski and Radulov. Hintz and Gurianov with Klingberg is fine. Same with that. You can do it either way. You can do the full power play stack if you want to. Dallas will see some ownership here, no question about it. Their second line appears to be. Let's just double check here. So their top line, the Hintz line, is expected to see the majority of the Larkin line, which would be probably not the best case scenario. The second line expected to see a mix of the top six. So actually, without Anthony Mantha, surprisingly enough, the Red Wings top line, Larkin line, giving up the most chances. So you can play either one of them. Like, they're both in decent spots. I think if we look at the big board here, they're both right around the same. I have a slight lean towards Dallas too, a little bit of an advantage. But again, I'm probably not playing Tanner Kiro. I'm probably not playing Jason Dickinson. I would do those mini stacks or a full power play stack if you're making multiple lineups. I think, they crush the Predators. So they could definitely just come out and absolutely manhandle the Red Wings. And then obviously Anton Khudobin is in play. He's the most expensive goalie on the slate for obvious reasons. So I don't know how much I'm going to play him. 8,500 is a lot. But there is enough value on the slate where you can play him. But there's a couple of guys underneath at 8,000 that I'd rather play and save the $500 and spend it on upgraded defenseman or something. I don't normally drink beer on a Tuesday, but 13-game slate called for it, I think. All right, moving on. How many games left do we got? Holy shit. Vegas and St. Louis. Well, doesn't look like it's going to be overly high-paced, fast-paced, I should say. Doesn't look, it looks like it's going to be relatively low scoring. If you want to play the narrative card, it is Alex Pietrangelo against the St. Louis Blues for the first time since leaving. It's in Vegas, though, so not that the fans wouldn't even matter if it was in St. Louis, but if you want to play the narrative card, sure. They did shake up their power play units, which makes Vegas a little bit more interesting. It's after 5, bro. Tip it back. Yeah, true. So the power play looks a little bit more intriguing now. I hated how it was before with Marchessault and Smith on the second unit. I do like Vegas too a little bit more. Now you got Carlson and Marchessault on the top unit. I have a little bit of interest there. Let's look here. So Vegas 2 expected to see most of St. Louis's top 2 lines, which again, both these teams are so good defensively that there's not going to be a ton of chances. But look at these Vegas 2 numbers right now. They're just outstanding. They're insane. But again, you're going to see a decent amount of the O'Reilly line. You're going to see a decent amount of the Braden Shen line. Both are really good defensively. So I think this is not going to be a game that's going to see too much ownership. And I think for good reason. If I'm going to play it, I like Vegas 2. 4,600 for Marchessault, 4,900 for Carlson, 4,500 for Smith. Super cheap. Definitely allows you to get Pietrangelo in that mix as well, or Theodore, whoever you prefer. They're probably right around the same price. I don't know for sure. Let me look really quick just so I'm not leading you astray. Theodore, 7,000. Oh, my God. And Pietrangelo, 6,700. So, yeah, I prefer Pietrangelo much more tonight, especially if you're stacking. Vegas 2. In terms of St. Louis, their second line's been really good. And I will play the Braden Shen, Jaden Schwartz line a ton this year, but not against Vegas. They're just too good. So not a whole lot of interest in that game. I probably won't play either goaltender either because it's just going to be such a good game that who knows who wins that game. I really have no idea. All right, Colorado. Let's get to it. Top stack of the night for 23,200. So they're crazy expensive, but they're worth it. They're going to see a majority of the top 2 lines. So that's the Hurdle line, that's the Couture line. And as you can see here, Hurdle line giving up 31 scoring chances against. Couture line's been a little bit better, but it doesn't matter. Look at these numbers from Colorado 1. Just ridiculous. Again, if you guys are new to this show and you want to be able to have these numbers at your fingertips, subscribe to become a daily Face-Off Premium subscriber. You get all this juicy information and a lineup optimizer to help you build your lineups quickly. It definitely helps if you're building multiple lineups. No question about it. So yeah, the Colorado one is just outstanding. They did go back to the normal look with Kadri in the second line as opposed to the third line tonight. That line has been just shit, generating absolutely no offense whatsoever. So no interest in anybody but Colorado one in this game. So the other day, last week at least, I really wanted to play Byram in his debut. He let us down, but we were just a couple days early. He's been playing really well. He's moved up in the top 4 already. He's already seen a little bit of power play time. Does see a decent amount of 5v5 ice time with Colorado 1. So Byram definitely in play if you're going to play Colorado and you can't afford their super expensive defenseman. Doesn't correlate on the power play, but will play with them at 5v5 and is only 2,900, played 18 minutes in his last game. So usage just keeps going up and up and up. It's a good sign. They are only dressing 6 defensemen again tonight. So all good signs for Byram. He allows you to play Colorado 1 and still fit some other, decent, either a good goalie or another decently high-priced line with them because he's so cheap. San Jose, I'm not going to go there tonight. There's just too many other good options. They've kind of fragmented their lines up again. I really liked when they had Hurdle, Timo Meier, and Evander Kane together. But it seems every time I play these guys, Evander Kane gets like 35 penalties and he's in the box for half the game. So it's a tough matchup. As you can see, Avalanche, just terrific defensively. Kadri line may not be generating any offense whatsoever, but they are still stout defensively. And Colorado 1 just has the puck the entire time, so they physically can't give up scoring chances. So, the only place I'm going in this game is Colorado 1. They're my top line of the night. I'm going to play them a ton tonight. They're giving up a ton of chances here as San Jose is. And I think as a whole, they're giving up the second most scoring chances in the NHL right now, the second most high danger chances for even strength. So they're terrible defensively. Martin Jones is not a good goalie either. So obviously they're going to be high owned, but they are worth the price tonight. Verona or Reinhart as a one-off. That's a good question. Let me think on that one too. Let me marinate a little bit. They're both in great spots. I like both of them tonight. I'm actually looking at the one lineup I have built right now, and it has both of them in it. So 5,800 for Vrana, 5,900 for Oshie. I would probably lean Oshie slightly just because his shot volume seems to be Vrana or Reinhart. Oh, I messed that up. So Vrana's a little bit cheaper, or Reinhardt's a little bit cheaper, I should say. I would probably go Vrana for the same reason I was going to go Oshie. His shot volume just seems to be a little bit more consistent. So his floor is a little bit better, but their ceilings are virtually the same because they're both in outstanding spots tonight. All right, Arizona and Anaheim. How many? Oh, we only have 2 games left. All right, here we go. So yeah, the Ducks are not very good offensively. As you can see here, their top line with Getzlaf's doing pretty well. Second line with Adam Henrique's doing okay. They're not, been off to a bit of a slow start. So I have no interest in Anaheim tonight. I don't think I ever play Anaheim in DraftKings ever because their offense is just so random. But Arizona, from being kind of a pretty lockdown 5v5 team last year, has been just free for all in it all year long so far. I think some of their numbers are a little bit skewed because they played against Vegas 4 times in a row, and that'll really fuck up your numbers. But Arizona is a good defensive team all in all. I would probably play Kemper tonight, and that's as far as I would get into this game. I think the one real issue is if you want to play anything on the Arizona side of the puck. So Anaheim obviously gives up chances. So Arizona's in play, but they're expected to change their lines a bit. Brassard's supposed to go back to the middle. I would assume that means Brassard, Keller, and Pitlick together. If that's the case, I have a little bit of interest in Brassard and Keller. They were by far their best line before they decided to break that lineup for whatever reason. So if you see in warmups and you're playing the late slate or whatever, and Keller and Brassard are together, I don't mind them as a mini stack. You can play them with Chychrun. Osterley, he's too expensive tonight. I wish Soderstrom was still playing, but whatever. So Chychrun's been on fire. I wouldn't mind like a little Brassard Keller mini in a late slate if they're together. Other than that, these lines are a disaster. Schmaltz and Garland are always kind of in play. I don't really even know how expensive they are, though. If they're too expensive, then it's not even worth it. Schmaltz 5,700, Garland 5,700. Yeah, they're an okay play, but I'm probably not going to go there. I don't think you guys want to hear me talk about Arizona, Anaheim very much anymore, so I'm just going to move on. Kemper's in play. Honestly, Gibson's in play too. It shouldn't be like a crazy high-scoring game. Gibson 7,600. But if you can save, it's 400, I think Arizona probably wins this game. And, Kemper's a better play. But like I said, Arizona's been really open and shit up this year. And if that continues to be the case, then Gibson could, have 35, 36 saves tonight. So even if they lose, he could be a fine play at 7,600. A few cheap stacks to pair with Colorado one. Yeah, I'll go back all through that. Let me just rip through this last game first, and then I'll get to some of those other things in the cheap D-men. So Calgary, Toronto. Toronto, I think, beat them 3-2 or 3-1 the other night. Pretty good game. So, again, this is another spot where things are getting really weird with lines. I've noticed that this year, getting lineup information has been difficult because not all home reporters are at the games, and the opposition team doesn't tweet out their lines sometimes. So Toronto had an optional skate today. They went back to Hyman, Matthews, Marner midway through last game. I would expect they stay together. One reporter said that during John Tavares's Zoom availability that he kind of alluded towards Mikheyev playing on his wing today. So that's why I have Mikheyev projected on the second line, which would bump Jimmy Vesey down to the third line. Honestly, Toronto's for sure in play tonight. Toronto won their offensive numbers are just outstanding. They're my third best stack of the night. Hyman allows you to keep them, it keeps them relatively cheap. I don't love Toronto. Like normally I'm all in. Their pace rating is really good in this game. They're expected to see a mix of the Calgary top nine, and Calgary's top nine is pretty good. Like, I don't think this is going to be like a super high scoring game. It's not going to be like, it's not a game where it's like Toronto and Edmonton and you're like, okay, let's game stack this. I think this, we're probably going to see another 3-1 game. So with as many high price options as there are elsewhere on the slate, I probably am not going to have too much Toronto, but they do look fine. They do look solid. I just, Markstrom's good. The Flames are pretty good defensively. So if when you look at the big board here, you've got Toronto has the third best line, and then you've got Edmonton one in a better matchup and $1,000 cheaper. So I think it's going to be a much easier to play Edmonton one. Although I think this might be a day where you can actually get Toronto one at reasonable ownership, right? Like they didn't go crazy against Calgary the other night. Colorado one's in a ridiculous spot, and Edmonton one is super cheap because Puljujarvi is on the line, and it's so much more intriguing playing Puljujarvi at 3,000 than it is playing Zach Kassian at 2,900. Yeah, exactly. 3-2 the other day with very few shots. Like and I expect that to be the case again tonight. It's going to be fairly low event in comparison to some of these other games. Like I think that the Colorado won, Edmonton won, Buffalo won, Washington won, Winnipeg too. I think all those lines are going to be in much higher event games. That doesn't mean that Toronto one can't go off. But like I said, this might be the day to play Toronto one because like a lot of time you play them and you've got them at 25 to 30% ownership. Where tonight, with their price, with how cheap Puljujarvi is, with how good of a spot Colorado's in, it might be a chance where you can actually play Toronto one and not have them at like 30% ownership. So I'm definitely going to play them a little bit because it's like if you can get them at a discount, they can still go off in this matchup. No question about it. Calgary one pops up a little bit here. The 12th best stack of the night. Lindholm, Mangiapane, and Tkachuk. Tkachuk is crazy expensive. So I'm probably not going to have too much Calgary. Toronto, surprisingly enough, for a team that's not usually very good defensively, has been really solid defensively lately. Even not outstanding, but solid enough. So I'm probably not going to have too much Calgary, although it does look like they're in an okay spot. Let's just sort them by line here just so we can get a better vision of things. So both Calgary 1 and Calgary 2 whichever way you want to order them, are in pretty decent spots. I think that honestly, I would probably play Gaudreau and Monahan. As a mini, I have no interest in playing Dominic Simon or Simone, however you want to say it. And Kachuk is just so much more expensive, right? So I think that I'd much rather play Gaudreau and Monahan at a discounted price than Kachuk at 7,400. I'll wait for that price to come back down in a better matchup to play Kachuk in a better spot. So, all right. So we had a couple questions here. Few cheap stacks to pair with Colorado. One. So Winnipeg 2 would be the obvious one. They're extremely high up there on the big board and really cheap. St. Louis 2 does pop a little bit too, so you can pair them with them if you want to go there. I think the one thing that you might have to get unique, might have to get weird tonight with your Colorado 1 stacks. You might have to go Colorado 1 with a couple some mini stacks in there, whether it's a forward and a defenseman and then 2 wingers or whatever. You might have to get weird because they are super expensive. But Winnipeg 2 would be at the top. St. Louis 2 really pops, and then obviously I mentioned Pittsburgh 2. Again, Pittsburgh 2 doesn't really show up on here, but they're they're just way too cheap for how good they are. And then, you can do some of the minis with Dallas. You can do the Pavelski Radulov mini. You can do the Hintz Gurionov mini. A lot of different options, but there's a lot of nice spots tonight. I think Nashville 2 is another line that you can pair with Colorado 1. There's a lot of different areas you can go in terms of paying some of these really cheap value lines that are in good spots against Colorado 1. Okay, no more questions. I think this is usually the part of the show where I talk about my value defenseman. So Rasmus Dahlin, I mentioned him, 4,100. Really like him. Noah Dobson, if you're playing Islanders 1, which, I don't love them tonight, but I think Noah Dobson, who is getting up there in price, he's up to 3,800. I still think he's fine. He's in play. He's playing over 20 minutes a night now. He's played 22 minutes the other night in a losing effort. So Dobson's still in play under 4K. Definitely like him there. Brandon Montour is somebody I like if you can't pay up for Dahlin and you want to play Buffalo 1. Montour does pair well with them at even strength, is a guy that can block over 3 shots. He's done it a couple times already this year, and is a guy that usually chips in a couple shots here and there. So Montour always plays over 20 minutes a night, 3,600, definitely somebody I'm interested in. I mentioned Fabro, he's 3,300. Similar type of thing, plays around 20 minutes, blocks a couple, chips in a couple. They should score some goals against Chicago, so I like Fabro a lot, 3,300 tonight. Do I like Fox at D-Man? Not particularly tonight. He's been outstanding, but he's up to 6,600. So that's just a little too pricey for me. I would probably rather play John Klingberg at 6,200, Cale Makar at 6,100, even probably Heiskanen at 5,600. He's just too expensive now. But I mean, obviously, if you're playing Rangers 1 or Rangers 2 and you want to correlate on the power play, then yeah, he's in play. But there's if you're one-offing Fox, he's just too expensive for me tonight. Cheap goalies tonight. Yeah, I'll get there in 1 second. Let me just rip through these defense. I'm going to keep pumping out Justin Hall. The 2 times I played him when I didn't mention him on the show, he did terrible. So now that I mentioned him on the show, maybe he pops off again. 1.3 and 2.8 DraftKings points his last 2 games. But before that, back-to-back double-digit points. If you're playing Toronto, he's a no-brainer. 3,200, plays with them a ton at even strength, plays a ton of minutes. Mario Ferraro is a guy I mentioned a lot. I'm probably not going to have too many Sharks, but Ferraro, if you need a cheap defenseman to one-off at the bottom of your roster, a couple shots, couple blocks every single game, playing with Brent Burns, or maybe Erik Karlsson, one of the 2. They switched him up recently. But plays 23 minutes a night for 3,100, ridiculously cheap. Dylan DeMello, if you're playing Winnipeg 2, is a good play as well. He just came back. He's been kind of just super consistent with the peripheral stats, blocking shots, getting shots. So he's good at 3,100. I mentioned Bowen Byram at 2,900 and Shane Gostisbehere at 2,500. Again, I think that's a really interesting way to if you want to play some Philly. I think playing some Gostisbehere with Hayes and I can't even remember who the other guy was, Van Riemsdyk, is a good way to do it. Okay, so cheap White Cloud is a cheap D. Yeah, I think, I always don't mind White Cloud. I think there's some more obvious plays tonight. Like I mentioned, that game being probably relatively low event. So I think White Cloud, I'd probably play some of these other guys I just mentioned before him tonight. But he'll always kind of be in play. But at 2,900, I think I probably prefer Byram tonight over White Cloud. You're doing God's work, man. Love the content. Thanks a lot, buddy. Please show where to find the line optimizer you've mentioned. Oh, so yeah, if you're a premium subscriber, oh jeez, I'm not even clicking on the right thing. If you're a premium subscriber, you go right here, optimizer, and then you get to lineup optimizer, and then it's really cool. You can pump in your, like if you want to, you can pump in your different stacks. Oops. Like if you want to stack Colorado 1. I mean, I'm not going to do it. There's so many things you can do here, but if you want, I can't get into it right now, but boom, Colorado 1. I mean, I wouldn't play Carl Soderberg, but so what I do and what I think is super useful for you guys now that I'm doing these this 5v5 score is go in and find which guys I have highlighted as my top stacks of the night and bump them up a bit, change the projections. That's how you really use the optimizer. But like, these projections are kind of just baseline numbers. And, if you see Colorado 1 at the very top of the stack sheet, bump up, McKinnon, and bump up Rantanen, and, same with Winnipeg too, bumped up their projections a little bit and add a little extra juice in there. And then run the optimizer, and you'll start getting some of these top stacks will start showing up more in your optimizer, and you won't get guys like Carl Soderberg. That's how I use it. I use it faithfully every single day. I use this tool and bump up projections based on that. But cheap goalies, what's the best projection model to use? I like to tinker with them a little bit. But usually if I'm playing GPP, I like to use the ceiling. Really gives you an outlook of how high somebody can go. But somebody asked about goaltenders. So my favorite goalies of the night: Hudobin, obviously 8,500, Rene 8,100, Kemper 8,000. I do not mind Bobrovsky at 7,500. Vanacek, I feel like I'm saying that guy's name wrong every single time. But I do like Vanacek a little bit, 7,300. He's been really strong. He made 45 saves against the Sabres the other day. So at 7,300, the Islanders haven't been this offensive powerhouse. They're really going to be a one-line team tonight. So if they can shut down the Barzal line using a combination of like Dowd and Eller, then that's really going to help Vanacek tonight because, Beauvillier's out. I don't think Nelson and Bailey are going to do too much without Beauvillier. So I like Vanacek at 7,300. I think he is probably as cheap as I will go, but I don't mind Cal Peterson at 6,900. Peterson has had a bit of a tough time so far this season. He hasn't been great, but he is a guy that, he's kind of the goaltender of the future in LA. He's put up some solid numbers at lower levels. He had a 922 save percentage in the NHL last year in 8 starts. So he is a pretty decent goalie. And as we've mentioned, I mean, Minnesota, we do like them, but we don't play them very often because they really just don't score that many goals. So, if Kopitar continues to stay hot and they can limit that Fiala-Parise combination, I think that this is definitely an avenue for LA to win this game tonight and get Cal Peterson his first win of the season. He's just 6,900. So he is he's as cheap as I would definitely go in terms of goaltending, but he's pretty Sabres put up shots. Georgiev, yeah, I just don't think Gorgiev's that good. And I'm not going to play him because I like the Sabres a lot tonight. I'm going to play a lot of Buffalo 1. So I'm not going to play Gorgiev just because I hope that he gets shelled. I hope he gets lit up because I am going to be all in on Buffalo 1 and Dahlin and all that. But we are coming up on the 55-minute mark here. So I got to go. I got to get ready for warm-ups here. I've got to build some lineups as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the DFS show. We will be back tomorrow. I think it's just a small little 2-game slate, so we'll really take a nice deep dive on those 2 games. And yeah, good luck tonight. Build lineups that win some cash. If you have any further questions after I get off live here, feel free to reach out on Twitter. I'll try to get to those as well. But, most important thing, if you're not already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Helps a lot. We really appreciate it. And we will be back. We will be back tomorrow, 5:15 for, I think it's a 2-game slate. Peter says, again, I agree, doing God's work. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. I'm having a lot of fun doing these shows. I feel bad because I haven't been doing the daily fantasy notebook because I haven't had time because I'm getting prepared for the show. But this is so much more fun. I love coming on. I get to enjoy myself, have a beer, talk to you guys. And it really, we break these games down like hard. like we get deep into these 13 games we rolled through in an hour. I think that's pretty good. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it because I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So we will see you guys back here tomorrow 5:15 for another DFS show. See you guys then.